Good morning, Edwin. I know it might not be morning when you're watching this, but what's appropriate, you know? There's Grandpa. Today, we're on the first step of making sourdough bread. So I'm going downstairs to the fridge to get the starter. Now, there she is. She looks pretty healthy. See all those bubbles there? Take it upstairs and get a better look. So I'm going to take this plastic off and wipe out the water. It's looking pretty healthy. Pretty good to work with. But it's too cold to really start, so I'm just going to let it adjust to room temperature. I'm going to do the float test so you can see when you know your starter is ready to work with. And yeah. That is a healthy starter. So here I've got a jar of measuring cup of warm water, and here I'm going to take out a spoonful of this sourdough. You see how gluteny it is? Drop it in here. And if it floats, it is ready to work with. So that's telling me that the starter is needing to be fed or needs to grow a little bit more before we can work with it. Well, welcome back. Here it's been a couple hours later since my last video, and I've got the starter out of the fridge. It's been sitting on the counter for a few hours. It's a little taller, a little more bubbly, but let's see if it passes the float test. So you take a scoop out and drop it in, and there it passes the float test, which means it's ready to work with. Okay, here we are, ready to work the starter. nice and bubbly. I've got my second jar for my starter that I'm going to put in the fridge. I like using this jar because it has a nice wide mouth, but you can use any jar. Lots of people use like mason jars with a loose fitting piece of saran wrap. And here we go. So I'm going to make, this recipe is like no fail, but it seems to be an extra step. So I could use some of this starter and build bread from there, but I'm going to make a batch of dough where I can make a bunch of bread and then put the starter in the fridge, so I make more bread less often. Some people would use it every day. Some people feed it every day. I don't. I do a big batch. I feed it once every 5 days, and it takes about 4 days to make the bread. So here we are. I've got my container. I'm going to make my new starter in. I got my container that I'm going to make my bread and pizza starter dough in. And I've got my scale in grams, so you can see that it is in ounces or grams. My recipe is in grams, so I use grams. And I always start with zero. You zero at a scale by holding the power, by turning the power on and off briefly, and it will zero out. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to take I'm going to separate my starter first. This is the one I'm going to feed. So I'm going to zero it out so it reads 0. And now I'm going to put in 250 grams. So because the starter is living, it's very sensitive to the kind of water, the kind of flour that you use. I put in too much, so I have to take some back. It's really doughy. 261, a little bit more. 254. You kind of have to be exact with the measurements. First, your measurements may be a little bit different than mine because of your altitude and moisture content in the air. Okay, there is 252. I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to add 250 grams of filtered water and 250 grams of bread flour. But at the moment, I'll put this aside, cover it, and put it aside. And then I'm going to get my bowl that I'm going to use to make my bread and pizza dough. You can, once you have this, you can make whatever you like as long as it's sourdough. So I'm zeroing out the scale. And for this recipe, which you'll have with this video, calls for 250 grams. So that's 214. 253, 249, 250. Okay, and this I'm going to add flour and filtered water to as well, but I'm just putting it aside so I can deal with this sticky mess. That's the thing with sourdough and bread making, is the dough is like glue, and if you don't clean up after yourself right away, it turns really hard, and it's hard for the person who's cleaning it to clean it. You can't put it in the dishwasher, it will just cook it. You have to clean as you go. So I like to have a nice sink full of soapy hot water that I can put these in, and then work on getting them clean later after I'm finished. This is the discard, what is left here. And with the discard, I don't know how much is in here. Usually I'd measure it. Maybe 150 grams with all the testing that we did. I can make something right away, like you can look for recipes on online that are for discard sourdough. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. What I usually do with it is mix it with my chicken food. Sometimes I've made pumpkin scones, which were good. You can make crackers. I haven't been that successful. So I've got 195 grams of sourdough discard. Some people just throw it away in the garbage or in the compost. But it's enough for, you know what recipe was really good was chocolate chip cookies, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sourdough discard chocolate chip cookies, they were good. Okay, so I've got 200 grams of that sourdough discard that I've got to do something with. Now I'm going to go soak my bowl, and then we're going to be ready to work with our starter and the starter that we're going to use to make our bread dough and pizza dough. Okay, next is the water. Now, as I said, the sourdough is living, so you don't want to do anything to shock it. Nothing too cold, nothing too hot. You can't use chlorinated water. You have to use filtered water. So I use my Brita filter and fill this jug about 3/4, and then I add some boiled water that's not filtered, and I just test it. My hands are clean. I made sure I washed my hands, and it's a little cold, so I gotta add more hot water. So that's good, and I'm sure you know the temp of bread. It should feel slightly warm on your wrist, just like a baby's bottle. Which you might not know, but you do now. Okay, so we got, we're going back to it. We're going to add the water and the flour. I'm going to zero out my scale. This is the starter, so I add 250 water, and I'll have this in your directions. So I'm going to add 250 water. There we go. I'm going to zero that out. Okay, and just not aggressive, just loosen it up from the bottom. That's how it looks. It's kind of clumpy. It's hard to mix. So I'm not going to go crazy mixing it. I'm just going to add my flour. So that's 250. Now, if I leave my spoon in the bowl, I have to remember that I do that when I'm measuring the weight. So here we go. Zero out the spoon. And now I'm going to add 250 grams of bread flour. The fellow that I learned this from, he liked to do half whole wheat, half white, both bread flour. Now, I say bread flour, it's important. I guess it's got to do with the gluten content. All-purpose flour doesn't work all the time, and bleached flour is definitely not going to work because of the chemicals in it. So you want best for bread flour. Rogers makes it, and Robin Hood makes it. It's slightly more expensive. Okay, so I've got that. And now I'm going to mix it. I try to keep the bowl clean because, as I said, this dough is like glue and you don't want it over everything. It gets really difficult to clean up and everything gets sticky, like drawer handles and floors, counters. So I try to keep it contained, everything as close as possible. Okay, it's a little lumpy, that's okay. And I'm going to cover that up. You see how the edge of the bowl is? No bubbles at all. Okay, now I'm moving on to the bread flour, bread dough. I zero out my bowl. That's got the 250 grams of sourdough starter. There we go. And now I'm going to add 500 grams of water. $4.96. Can you believe it? $500. Yay. Okay. Again, I'm going to mix this up a little bit. It's like almost mixing marshmallows in water. So just a little bit. There's still a big clump in there. And now, again, I'm going to be conscious that my spoon is in there when I zero this out. And now I'm going to put 500 grams of white flour. $5.29. $500. Okay, I'm going to take it off the scale and mix that together. Just looks like oatmeal or something. There's bumps in it and lumps in it. That's fine. I just want to make sure the side of the bowl is kind of clean, because by the time I go to take this out, this will be dry and hard to clean off. It's also really hard on the drains, all this flour and water. Okay, so that's set. Next thing I'm going to do is make sure it's covered. And depending on how many hours you have and the temperature of the room that the bread's in is how long it's going to take to get this risen so that you can make up your bread. Usually what I do is I'll put it in overnight in the fridge, and in the morning I'll take it out, leave it on the counter to warm up, and it's usually ready by then. But it's only 2 o'clock and it should be ready by about 6 o'clock if I put it in the proofing oven. So I think that's what I'm going to do today. So if you're making this and you're going to put it in the fridge, it's good to make it at a time when you can put it in the fridge so it's not in the fridge too long, like overnight. 24 hours should be fine. And you'll get to know how your dough is rising. It really depends on how active it is and how warm the room is and the type of flour you use, and goes on and on. But once you get to know your sourdough starter, then you know what it likes and what it doesn't like. So this starter here, I'm going to put in the fridge, and it's going to sit in the fridge for 4 or 5 days before I pull it out and go to use it. When it smells really strong of alcohol and you get a little bit of juice on the top, you know that it's gone too far, so you have to feed it again before you can use it. Remember we did the float test at the beginning, so we can use the float test when we go to use this, and then again when we pull that out. So, see you when this is all risen. Take a good look, because it's going to be different. Oh, by the way, some people put an elastic band around their bowls, so they've put I don't even have an elastic band. But they would put an elastic band around the bowl at the level of where the dough is at, and then when it's doubled, they'll know it's ready. So you can do that, you can do the float test, and eventually you'll just know when it's ready. Okay, talk to you later. Well, hello, Edwin. Here we are, and it is 8 o'clock at night, and I think we're finally ready to go here. See how this looks. Looks pretty healthy, but just to double check, we're going to do the float test. No, we got a little bit from there. And definitely floating. So that means the dough is ready to work. So we've got the dough, and we need the scale again. And first thing that we're going to do is make pizza dough, which we will use throughout the week to make pizzas as we like, or focaccia. So for my pizza recipe, I have 1 or 2 or 3 loaf recipe. I like to go with the 2 loaf recipe. But I will make more if I'm having an event or we're planning a Friday night pizza night. Okay, so for my pizza recipe, I'm going to take out 300 grams of this starter. $1.91. $2.94. 300. Great. So I got that out. I'm gonna move it aside, put a cover on it if I can find a frickin' cover. Okay, and now I've got this big bowl of starter left, and I'm gonna figure out how much starter is in this bowl. I use this bowl all the time, so I know that it weighs
1,240 grams.
1,240 grams. So if I have the scale on 0 and I weigh the bowl and the starter, I've got 2151. 2151.
9/11. Ooh, scary business.
Okay, so then what I do is a little bit of math here. I've got 911 grams of starter, and I'm gonna do 100% flour, so that will be 911 grams flour. And then I'm going to do 55% water. That's the filtered water. And that is, what's 55% of 911?
Times 55% equals 501.
501 grams of water. And then I'm going to do 3% salt. That salt needs to be pure salt. The table salt that we buy has iodine in it. It can't have iodine. So usually like Himalayan salt or Celtic salt or sea salt. 3% of 911 is, pardon?
2.73.
27.3?
2.7.
911 times 3%
Yeah.
is 27.3.
Oh, well, maybe. Let me see. Maybe I didn't.
27. So it's 27.3, so I'm gonna round it off at 27. All right.
27. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so 501 of water. I got my scale. And I'm going to zero it out. And I'm going to add 501 grams of water. Now that's warm water. And it's filtered, so I use filtered water with a little bit of boiled water so it's nice and warm. And here we go. $4.68, $5.08. I'm gonna mix that up just a little bit. It's kind of like a soupy mess. And now I'm going to zero out the scale again with my spoon in, and I'm going to add 911 grams of bread flour. Now, in the recipe that I use, he does a percentage of whole wheat flour. I don't really like whole wheat flour, but I do like rye flour. So I'm gonna add about 1/8 couple spoons of rye flour. I still have to get to 911. Rye or whole wheat flour takes up a bit more moisture, so it can affect the recipe. You just have to learn how to work with it. So there we go, 900, 916. There we go. I'm gonna stir that up now. Oh. Oh, yes. So this is my bread recipe. This will make about 3 loaves of bread. And then the pizzas, I make small pizzas, so I get about 5 loaves out of that recipe. But it would be like 2 big pizzas. So it says mix it until it's a shaggy mass, which is pretty much the way that it looks right now. So I just mix it there, and I put the lid on, and then I rest it for 30 minutes. Hey Google, set timer for 30 minutes.
All right, 30 minutes, starting now.
Okay, so that is the bread recipe. And this is the pizza starter that we pulled out. Okay, so that's 300 grams. I'm going to put it on the scale, zero it out. All right, so for the pizza recipe, which I'm going to be including in this package, calls for 230 grams of water. So that's warm filtered water. $205. $231. Okay, so I mix that up. The recipe then calls for, I'm going to zero that out and add my 15 grams of sugar. And then 500 grams of bread flour. There's 324, 435. There's 500. Okay, I'm going to mix that up so it's like a shaggy mass as well. The pizza dough is a bit drier because we add oil to it afterwards. Okay, there's my shaggy mass. And I'm going to let that one rest 1 hour. Hey Google, set timer for 1 hour.
Second timer for 1 hour.
Okay, they're both resting. While they're resting, I'm going to get the salt and oil ready. Gotta get my bowl for my salt for my bread. So I zero out the bowl and it was 27 grams. Too much. Okay, so that is for the bread recipe. Then I'm gonna zero out my next bowl, and that one was 15 grams for the pizza recipe. Oh, too much. There we go. And then I have to get the oil for the pizza, which is 30 grams. And I just make this so often I know it by heart, but in the beginning I needed to look at the recipe. So there we go. Here's my salt and oil for the pizza. I keep it by the pizza. And here's my salt for the bread. And that is it for the bread. Just salt, water, and flour. I'll need a little bit more flour just to rest it, but that's all the ingredients. So, see you in what, 25 minutes? Do 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 do. Hello, we're back. The 30-minute timer went off. This is how the dough looks. I was just wondering if I could zoom in automatically, but it doesn't look like it. Maybe. No, too complicated for me. So, here we are. And this is just a mess. It's dry, crusty. It looks awful. Looks like there's no way it will be good. I'm gonna put it out onto the counter. So you want to make sure your counter is totally clean because it's going to go everywhere. So you prepare ahead of time. And I didn't learn that easily. So I'm just getting everything out of the bowl that I can. Because, like I say, it's just really messy. And the bread, it will eat all these chunks up, amazingly enough. I just use this Pampered Chef tool that is for cleaning pots and such. There's other tools you can use, But right away, I'm gonna need this bowl for later, so right away I'm gonna put it in the water to soak so that it's easy to clean in 20 minutes. Julia Child, you know? Okay, so I got my dough out. It's a real mess. And I'm gonna take my salt and sprinkle it over. I've got my cutter here that I can use to lift it up. Now, if I had it on my wooden counter, it would be really sticky on the counter, but this counter, it's not so sticky, so you can experiment with that. So what you're doing is pulling, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. That's what you're supposed to be doing, and then turn it and stretch and fold, and stretch and fold. Now you can get this paddle and scrape it up. And then once the salt's mixed in, you take it and throw it on the counter. And stretch and fold and stretch and fold. It's very different from kneading, but it's so wet that you wouldn't want to knead that. Like, it would be a mess. So stretch and fold, and then pick it up and slam it again. Stretch and fold. When you pick it up and slam it, it can go everywhere. So your grandfather built me this cabinet so that I can do this safely, you know, safe from everything else. It's kind of deep, and the stone makes it really easy to slide the dough off. And it has a backsplash. Okay, it's still pretty gooey, and don't add flour. You're tempted to add flour because that's what you do with yeast breads. But you just keep going here. Stretch and fold, stretch and fold, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. Okay, and now I'm going to throw it again. Slam it, stretch, fold, stretch. You can see it's coming together here. Still a bit lumpy. Stretch and fold. it should be like 8 minutes. Till you get to this point. Okay. So it's a little bit lumpy. It's still very sticky. And I'm going to let it rest now. Put it all into a ball. And I'm gonna get a little bit of flour, not much, like a handful, a third of a cup. I'm gonna put that bread on that flour, stretch, fold, and again, and then I'm gonna let it rest for 10 minutes. Under a little plastic wrap. And I find if I add flour to this dough on my hands that it comes right off. And then I give this dough to my chickens and they're very happy. So, see you in 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes and it's relaxed a little bit. I'm gonna stretch and fold and stretch and fold. Turn it, stretch and fold, stretch and fold. Still a little bit lumpy, you can see. I'm gonna roll it into a ball by holding tension on the counter, holding my fingers on the counter while the ball rolls forward. And just gently turn it and gently move my hands around. It's kind of pinching it on the bottom. Okay, now that it's in a nice ball, I'm gonna cover it and let it rest. I'm gonna do this 2 more times for a total of 3 times. First one on flour, the second one, and then the third one. And each time the dough will be a little bit more consistent, a little more gluten-y. And then I'm going to do the pizza dough. All right, see you soon. The timer's rung. This is the second. Stretch and fold, stretch and fold. Turn it, and you see it's changing already. It's quite heavy and thick. And shape it into a ball. This will be the last 10-minute rest that it has before I put it away for the night. I'm going to put it off to the side because any minute my timer is going to go for the pizza dough. The pizza recipe is a bit different in that it has the oil and it's quite dry. But also you knead it, whereas you don't knead, you just do the stretch and fold with the bread. with the pizza dough. You need it. Hey Google, cancel timer. Okay, here we go with the pizza dough. I'm gonna scrape this bowl out as well as I can again. Okay, the pizza dough, I'm gonna put that salt on. It's really looks messy. There's dry, crusty bits, just like there was before with the dough, the bread dough. I'm gonna pour this oil over. It's very messy. And using this tool is really handy. Just kind of cut the oil into it. Okay, now I can start. I should have worn a better shirt, especially as an example to you. Now kneading, it's kind of stretching, you know, kneading. It's kind of the same thing. It's really dry, unlike the other dough, which was really wet. But as soon as this oil absorbs into the flour, it's going to become very wet and sticky. So I'm going to knead this for about 8 minutes until it's a nice ball, and then we're gonna put it to rest. See you when I'm done. Okay, here we are. I've done my kneading. Oh, it's still a little bit lumpy. But it's pretty good. It's sticky, but it's pretty solid. So now I'm just gonna do a little stretch and fold. It's very stiff. Okay, I'm gonna shape it into the ball. And drop it in this bowl of a little bit of oil, and that's it. Put it in the fridge for the night. This guy has been resting for 10 minutes. It's last 10 minutes. Gonna do last stretch and fold on them. They say you should name your starter. This guy's name is Maxwell. There we go. Into the bowl. Lid on. And definitely some cleanup. See you tomorrow morning. Well, good morning. So, about 3 hours ago, I took this out of the fridge. These two, the bread dough, the pizza dough. And now I've got to get ready to shape them. So first thing I do is, you see how it's more than doubled in bulk. I'm gonna dump it out of here. Clean out the bowl again as best I can so I don't get in trouble from Grandpa. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is stretch and fold. Stretch, fold, stretch, fold, fold, and then just a little ball. You hear the bubbles popping as I roll it here. Now I'm gonna let it rest 15 minutes. Hey Google, 15 minutes on the timer.
Sure, 15 minutes. And we're starting now.
I'm gonna cover it with plastic, and I'm gonna do the same with the pizza dough. You know, that pizza dough is not quite ready. I think it needs more time. Should be a little about like that. I mean, double in bulk. It just is a little heavy still. So I'm gonna leave that and do it later. And in the meantime, I'm gonna get ready to build this bread. I never weighed it. I'm guessing it's 3 loaves.
Discuss the kind you're covered.
So this next stage of making sourdough, it's a funny thing, sourdough. You have to cook it in a container that has a lid. And I believe the reason for that is that the steam in the container when it cooks is that what really cooks the bread and makes that crusty crust. So for me, I use this container, cast iron pot with a lid that will fit in my oven. I find that loaves over 800 grams are pretty big. So an 800 gram loaf is what I go for in this container. In this container, it's a little bit smaller and it's restricted with the lid. I can only do about 750 grams in here. So those are the two containers that I use. And you have to heat the container, except for this one, just before you put the bread in. So how you do that is you raise it in a soft container so that you can dump the bread in the hot container when you're going to cook it. So what I do is I cover these baskets with parchment paper. You may think to yourself that you could use a bowl, but when you use a bowl, you lose the shape when you go to pour it out. Some people will use a bowl and put parchment in and lift it out of the bowl and put it in the hot pot. And some people do it in a basket like I'm doing here. I'm going to try and get the bowl covered so that if I put it in the fridge to rise overnight, it's not exposed to any air. So it's going to take about 6 hours for this bread to rise. If I have it in a proofing oven, or it has to be proofing oven, it can't just be a warm oven, you don't want to burn it. I can maybe get away with 4 hours, or I can put it in the fridge overnight and it kind of rises in there and then needs another hour or two to do the final rise. So it's all about the time of day and the temperature of the kitchen as far as to planning where to proof this batch. It's only 9:30 here, so I've got plenty of time to proof the dough on the counter, which is probably what I'm going to do today. And when this buzzer goes off, we're going to get to forming the dough. But before we do that, I'm going to put a little bit of this. This is, it looks like cornmeal. It's a little finer than cornmeal. It's called semolina, and I use it for the bottom of the pan, the bottom of this parchment paper, and then the top, so the plastic doesn't stick to the top. And then I also use it on the pizza stone. I put it on the pizza stone. It's hot. You slide the pizza on, and it kind of rolls on this flour onto the hot pan in the oven. And we'll talk about that more. Nita. Okay, so I'm going to put it on pause until this is done resting, and then we'll get to shaping the dough. I'm going to give this a little wipe and get my cutter ready and my scale. Okay, welcome back. The dough has rested. And we're gonna bring it over here to weigh it, see what we got. Zero out my scale. And we're at 22.76. 22.76. So that's 3 700-gram loaves. Right?
100, yeah, you bet it is. Good math.
All right, so we're gonna divide this into 3. First loaf, $6.99.
Close.
Second loaf, $7.83. Third loaf, $7.74. Okay. So, first loaf, stretch, fold, fold, and again on the other way. For this loaf, I am making it in this square, a rectangular pan. So again, it's a little harder when it's a cylinder, but similar to how we made the balls, I'm just putting pressure on the counter and on the bread to kind of roll it, push those bubbles out. And there we go. First loaf, in we go into the pan. And get the next one. So stretch and fold. And then the other way, stretch and fold and fold. And now I'm going to do the one where I make a ball. There we go. Nice ball. I'm going to turn it upside down in the basket.
Why do you do that?
So when we put it in the pot, we're going to take it and turn it upside down in the pot so that that top, nice and round, will be the top of the bread. Okay, next one. Stretch, fold, fold. Stretch, fold, fold, and again. Forming the ball so the top is nice and taut. There we go. Nice ball. I'm going to take it, put it upside down in that pan. Okay, now what I'm going to do is sprinkle with this semolina flour. I'm just going to sprinkle around the sides and top so it doesn't stick to the parchment when I pour it out. And the same with this. I don't want it sticking to the plastic that I'm going to cover it with or the sides of the pan. And that's it. 3 loaves of bread. Now, if you don't use plastic and you use waxed cloth, that will work as well. And okay, that doesn't want to work, so I'm going to use my fancy elastic here. All right, there's one, and we've got these lovely little hats that I can put on them. Now, I need to put one of these in the fridge because I don't have room in my oven to cook 3 at a time. So I can cook 1 round, 1 square at a time. So I'm going to keep these out to rise or proof. And I'm going to put this guy in the fridge. And right now it's 10 o'clock, so I'm guessing that these will be ready around 3 or 4 o'clock. Unless I put them in the oven to proof, then they'd be ready earlier. All right, talk to you later. Well, hello there. So here we are. Right now it's 4 o'clock, and remember I left this pizza dough. I was going to form it, but it wasn't quite ready. Now it's over ready. And these guys are ready. They're over ready as well, because we had a lunch date. But I think it will be okay. So I've got the oven on. My oven only goes to 450. Your oven, I'm thinking, will go to 500. So you preheat the oven with the pot in the oven, except for this one, which is unique. But the oven preheats the oven preheats the pot at 500. I can only do 450, and for about 35 minutes you leave that pot in there so it's nice and hot when you put the dough in. So the oven is on now, and it's preheating those pots, and I've got the pizza dough here, so I'm going to make up the balls, and then I'm going to put them in the fridge so we can use it as we like in the future. So you remember I just do up these balls now, and then the earliest I could use them is after the balls have doubled in size, which if I were to use it now because it's nice and warm, it would probably only be a few hours. But then if I put it in the fridge and then take it out, I'll need like 3 to 4 hours. So stretch and fold, and stretch and fold, and then let it rest. For 15 minutes. Okay, so it's rested 15 minutes. I want to see what size I need to make my pizza balls. I've got 1,000 grams.
100, geez.
Or 1,000. So I can make 4 250s. So that's what I'll aim for. $2.65, not bad. Pull, stretch, and then the other way, and then form it into a ball. My dough here, for some reason, is a little stiff. So yours will probably be a little looser, which would be good. But it's still going to make really nice pizza. Now, this ball of 250, it's not a huge pizza. It's more like a personal size pizza because of, if you remember, I have a small oven. 260 and 270, not bad. Okay, stretch, fold, fold, stretch, fold, fold, and then we're doing the ball. And same with this last one. Okay. Okay, I've got all these pizzas made up. Now I've got a cookie sheet with a piece of parchment on it. I'm gonna drop these balls in flour and then put them on the parchment. So there, I've got 4 pizzas, or sometimes I'll make like focaccia bread, and we'll dip it with hummus, or dip it in balsamic vinegar and oil with soup. But often we have pizza. So you want to make sure these are covered good. You can use your waxed cloth if you have that instead of plastic. They're going to grow, so you want to give it a little bit of room to grow. And then what I do is I place a damp cloth over top of them and put them in the fridge. And the reason why I do that is because it gives it a little bit of weight and forms around the dough, so it kind of holds the barrier on the plastic or wax or whatever you have. So I'll just make this damp, wring it out really tight. I don't want water on the pan. Just want the weight of the water on the bread. And then when it dries, it forms around the bread and keeps it, or the dough, and keeps it from getting hit by air. Okay, whatever you call that. There's a word for that. I know there is. Okay, next we got the oven 5 minutes away from being ready. So I've got this loaf. Now this pan is a special pan made for sourdough. And the reason why is it's a bread loaf pan, but it has a lid which is in the oven heating up. That way you can cook it with the lid on like you're supposed to with sourdough. But the nice thing about this pan is that the loaf comes out nice and square, so easy to make sandwiches. So then you cut a slice in the loaf to help let the steam out. If you look online, you see people, they've got fancy designs. They usually do it with a tool called a lame. I've got a sharp knife. Okay, that one's ready to go in the oven. This is really hot. There we go. In the oven, 500 for 25 minutes. With the lid on. Okay, I've got my second pot here. It's really hot. I'm gonna take this dough that is over risen a bit, I think. I'm gonna turn it upside down and drop it in to that pot. I shake it a little bit just to get it settled on the bottom. And then again, my design with the nice sharp knife. And in the oven it goes, the lid on. "25 minutes. See you shortly." Hey, Edwin. Finally get to see you. Yeah, I've got a cameraman. Anyway, here we are. The oven has finished 25 minutes. And normally I would turn it down to 450, but since I don't have 500, I just leave it at 450. And I'm going to take these lids off. And there's the first loaf. It's pretty full. Okay, let's see how this guy did. Nice.
What do you call those things?
This is an ear here. An ear is good. It's supposed to be taller. I haven't accomplished that. Okay, so back in the oven for 20 minutes. And then we'll pull it out, put it on the racks. I'll let you see that part. And then you can't cut it for 4 hours. Sorry, long process. See you later. Hey, Edwin. So, 20 minutes have passed. Oh, this one burnt a bit on the top. That's totally okay. And it just pops right out of there. This one may be a little different. We'll see. Sometimes if I overfill it, it's hard to get out. Not this time. You want, when you tap the bread, nice and hollow sound. And see that the crust is going up from the bottom, kind of on an angle. It's not like flopped down, so it wasn't over risen. Looks like it was a good rise. Yeah, so I guess we'll see you when we cut into it. And the next step is to make up a pizza, which will be a few nights away. Love ya. Okay, so here we are. Pizza night. Pat's making mushrooms.
Mushrooms are done.
And
Have,
the oven has been on for an hour at 450. And now we've put it on broil for 5 minutes. And we've had the stone in there heating up. So now we're ready for pizza. So here you go.
okay, now you get the mistress of pizza dough.
Hey, Edwin. It's Grandma.
Like you didn't know that.
Okay. So, we got the pizza dough here. We took it out about 3 hours ago. And quite often when you're having pizza, you have one because it's good. Okay, so have a look at this. It looks really nice. You can see some air bubbles in there. I don't want to disturb it too much at the moment. So first thing I do with this ball, remember we made 5 or 6 balls? Well, this has been in the fridge rising for 2 days, and now it's on the counter rising for 4 hours or 3 hours. If it's been in the fridge longer, then it will take less time, but it's got to come to room temp. So I'm going to take this wet dough, drop it in the flour so that it's not sticky anywhere. And then I'm going to pinch the middle, just pinch it down. Shake off that flour. Okay, so see how I'm pinching the middle? So I'm pinching it from the middle, going out. And kind of letting the dough stretch. If the dough is risen more, it will stretch a little quicker, a little easier. So this could have risen a little bit more, but it will still be great. So I've got the center really thin, and I've got the crust. I can still go smaller on the crust here. And as I'm going, I'm kind of pulling and letting it stretch with gravity. So making it smaller, pulling. Now you probably have a normal size oven and a regular size pizza pan. I do not, so I have to go rectangular for the size of my pan and oven. So I put my hands in and I just kind of stretch it gently. You see how thin it's getting there? Just keep that crust and kind of stretch inside. That's going to be a great pizza. You can pop that bubble if you like. I kind of like the hollow bread. Okay, this is ready. I've put it on my paddle here. Grandpa's put some semolina flour down. I'm holding it like that. You have to keep moving it. When I was holding it there, I just poked a hole. So I'm just gonna patch it up. And yeah, you just gotta keep moving it. Otherwise it will stretch and tear. Okay, here we go. Nice looking pizza. This pizza dough has a little bit of rye flour in because my hands had rye flour from making the bread. Now comes the sauce. Now this pizza dough is a little bit different than the yeast dough. It's a very thin crust and it cooks very quickly, so you don't put a lot of toppings on it, and if you do, you want them thin. That's my experience anyway. These are more like basil and tomato and cheese. And what we're going to do tonight is pepperoni and olives and cheese. I'm not using much sauce, just a third of a tin. It's not a huge pizza. What would you say, Pat? 10 by...
Oh, 9 by 11.
9 by 11.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you later when we pull it out. Oh, just before you go, the oven goes in the oven, 450. The oven's preheated for a good 45 minutes. Then broil for 5, then back to 450. And we're gonna put it in for 8 minutes. And then we're gonna turn it up to broil for 3 minutes. And then we're gonna take it out. Okay, maybe you should watch me put, oh.
I turned it on.
Okay, good, because I gotta dress it.
I did. No, it's still on record.
Oh.
Okay, here we are. So here we go. Oh, I gotta have
Let's turn this light on here.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, little pull.
It took us a while to learn how to do this, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
You're okay. Okay.
8 minutes.
Hey there, Edwin. The timer went off. That's how it looks. We just set it to broil for 3 minutes. And then we'll pull it out. So the recipe says 2 minutes. I put it on for 3 minutes. It's definitely ready.
It's throwing off in, right? You didn't make room.
I didn't make room.
One of the things we try and do. There it is. The beautiful thing. Okay, so now they can start shaping, you say?
What's going on?
Next one is mine, right? I have to shape it myself, all myself. I feel very virginal.
Goodbye.
Bye.